Hi, Lenore here, and I'm going to finish up this problem. So we're doing number 2, prepare the December 31, 2014 stockholders equity section of the balance sheet. So, are you ready? Okie doke. The first part is, the first item is always preferred stock. So let's put that in. And here's where we need to go back up to the original information, because this information is important. 6.5%, let's put that in. $75 par. And then we need to add how many shares were authorized. That's the papers that they signed with the Secretary of State. How many shares have been issued, which we find up here, right? 3,000 shares. And then how many shares are outstanding. Shares issued shares outstanding are the number of shares issued less any treasury stock. That doesn't affect our preferred stock in this situation, but it will affect common stock when we move on. So remember, for your final, all this information must be listed. I'm going to make this column a little larger so I can get just a little more information in here. Okay, authorized, and that was listed here, 15,000 shares. I'll make it just a smidge bigger. All right. Shares outstanding and issued. That is going to be the first time we issue shares. So that's right there, 3,000 shares. So 3,000 shares issued when they were offered on the number of shares offered on the stock market, and they are also outstanding. Okay, so this will be the amount entered into preferred stock. Right there. After preferred stock, of course, comes additional paid-in capital. And that, too, is going to come from our journal entry. Trying not to go too fast so I don't make you dizzy. Okay, so preferred stock always comes first. Next is common stock. And here's the information over here. $3 par. Shares authorized, 150,000. And number of shares outstanding. This one's going to take a little bit of a calculation. So first things first, let's put the calculation over here. We have already issued 32,000 shares. Then in B, we issued another 8,000 shares. So that's coming directly from B. After we purchased, so these are the shares that are issued. 4,000. Let's give them a little double underline. So these are shares issued. That will always remain shares issued. But outstanding is different because we have to subtract out the treasury stock. So let's do that. We purchased 1,250 and we sold 500. And then we sold, 250. So these are all the transactions regarding treasury stock. So we have 500 shares of treasury stock remaining. We need to subtract those shares of treasury stock from common stock issued in order to get outstanding shares of stock. So once again, shares issued, 40,000 shares issued. Now outstanding is shares issued less treasury stock, and we have 500 shares of treasury stock. So let's do it with Excel because I could mess it up. So 39,500 are shares outstanding. If you don't understand this, please read the book about this because this is so very important. One, it needs to be on the stockholders' equity section, and two, we need this information for dividends. So the dollar amount. First, we need to add the beginning balance, and then we need to add the amount from Journal B. So let me make sure that that's correct. 24,000 plus 96,000. So that's common stock. Then we have additional paid-in capital common stock. Let's do the same. We take the 139,200 beginning balance and add to it additional paid-in capital common stock from our journal. So preferred stock comes first, common stock second, and then we have additional paid-in capital for treasury stock. We don't put treasury stock at this point in time because it is not contributed capital. It is not capital coming from the outside. Instead, it's contra equity. But we do have additional paid-in capital for treasury stock. So hopefully when I write it down, you'll understand. Oops. Treasury stock. So this is additional paid-in capital treasury stock, not the treasury stock itself. And again, we're just going to pick this up from the journal entries. We have 5,000, 250 here, plus 500 here. Okay. The next item is always retained earnings. And again, we were given a number for retained earnings, and that is 186,520. The next item is dividends, the contra equity account. So not to be confused with dividends payable, even though they're the same number. Remember, this is contra, so we show it as a reduction. And the last item is treasury stock. I like to put the number of shares here. And remember, we determined the number of shares by taking what we originally purchased less what we sold. So here's a treasury stock. From this, it's a debit, so from this I'm going to subtract that treasury stock, and I'm going to subtract that treasury stock. So the answer is 5,000, but it's not. Remember, this is contra, so I'm going to have to put it in now as a reduction. So there we go, 5,000 as a reduction. So here we're all done. Total stockholders' equity for the Nance Corporation. And yes, it was named after Professor Nance. And we need to include all these dollar amounts here. There we go. So the total stockholders' equity for the Nance Corporation as of December 31 is $858,470. So with that said, Lenore out.